Joining me now to talk about this is Dr. Mike Jones, Executive Director of the think tank Migration Watch UK. Mike, it's good to see you. Do you think when it comes to illegal migration that, as with other things Keir Starmer has pointed to, it's going to get worse before it gets better?
Certainly, I think it's going to get worse. You've got to remember what Keir Starmer is proposing has already been tried and tested, both here in the UK and overseas. So take the Border Security Command. This is, a centralised unit that provides a joined-up approach, cross-departmental approach to tackling the people traffickers. But this unit effectively existed under the last Tory government, admittedly under a different name. It was called the Clandestine Channel Threat Command. But did it stop the gangs? No, it didn't. Sir Keir Starmer also wants greater cooperation with foreign governments and transnational organisations, but this is already happening. We cooperate with Frontex, Europol, we cooperate with the French, with the Turkish government, and of course with the European Commission. Has it stopped the gangs from operating? No, it hasn't. Sir Keir also wants to apply anti-terrorism laws to the people traffickers themselves. This was tried in Italy. The Italian government used elite anti-mafia units to stop the traffickers from shipping people from the Libyan coast. Did this work? Well, it made a difference at the margins, but ultimately what worked for the Italians was having a pushback policy with the Libyan government. Ultimately, you cannot solve this crisis if you cannot detain and deport people swiftly.
The Labour government would say they're doubling the amount that goes to the Border Security Command unit by putting in another £75 million. So take your point that it already existed, but surely that extra money, as they would see it, is going to make a difference.
Well, in principle, I'm not against the state spending more money on border security and border enforcement. But ultimately, politics is the language of priorities. And I'm sure this extra cash, is going to be spent on surveillance equipment and special investigators. I'm sure it'll make a difference at the margins. But ultimately, you have to get to the root cause of the problem. This is the priority. And the root cause is not one of capacity and resources. It's the legal system, specifically the Human Rights Act, which makes it very, very difficult to deport people who have arrived here illegally. And if you can't deport people, then the pull factor remains, and people will want to, pay the people traffickers €6,000 or whatever they're paying now.
But Mike, did it not work in terms of doing a deal with the Albanian government to stem the flow of Albanian illegal immigrants coming here? I appreciate other countries and people leaving the likes of Vietnam have perhaps filled that gap and increased the numbers now to more than they were in terms of border channel crossings compared to last year. But could either government, previous Conservative, now Labour, not point to that Albanian deal as having worked?
I don't disagree with you. I think you're right. But there were very few legal challenges to the Albanian deal. It's regarded as a safe country, so to speak. But the lion's share of the migrants crossing the channel are from countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iran. And, under the Human Rights Act, which embeds the European Convention of Human Rights into domestic law, deporting these people to their country of origin is extremely difficult. So you would have to amend the Act to allow that. And to make matters worse, Sir Keir Starmer has actually mothballed the Rwanda plan, which provided that third safe country to deport people to. So that the pull factor has probably increased since the Tory party were kicked out of office.
Yeah, but Mike, again, a lot of people point to the huge cost of that Rwanda plan running into the hundreds of millions of pounds that perhaps would be better spent elsewhere.
It's expensive. Yeah, you're right. But look at, zoom out and take a panoramic view of this. The costs for Rwanda are worth it long term if it's operational, because that actually reduces the cost of illegal immigration further on down the line in terms of housing, benefits, even possible security threats. And obviously the costs of Rwanda would go down over time if it was effective, because you'd have fewer people arriving.
Yeah. Just final couple of questions, if I may. In terms of, you've already mentioned the slow process of deciding whether people should stay or be deported, and then the problems of potentially deporting them to places which are not considered safe. When it comes to the processing, though, I mean, the wait for people, especially people who are legitimately seeking refuge, is interminable at the moment still.
Well, if you're referring to the backlog, the backlog is huge precisely because you cannot deport people, and there's this merry-go-round of appeals that takes place. Obviously, there are other factors involved as well. There have been capacity issues there, and productivity in the Home Office has also been an issue. But if you want to reduce the backlog and the cases that are there in the system already, then you need to deport those who arrive currently very, very quickly.
Yeah, and as I say, final question. I mean, this Labour government is not going to bring back the Rwanda plan. They've been pretty clear about that. But are there other deterrents they could perhaps look at?
Well, I mean, Labour have proposed to speed up deportations to safe countries. I think that's very sensible. I'm not opposed to that at all. There's definitely low-hanging fruit there. And yeah, I mean, disrupting the supply chains of the gangs is sensible. Uh, you know, um, Freezing dodgy bank accounts, confiscating boat parts, and so on. But again, this is only going to make a difference at the margins. Life is already more uncomfortable for the gangs. Indeed, the people smugglers have actually increased their fees, and they're outsourcing the risk onto the migrants by stuffing them into boats like sardines in a tin. But the pull factor is still there. Ultimately, you've got to detain and deport these people as soon as possible. Everything else is just, fiddling around the edges.
Dr. Mike Jones, thank you.